Hi, man.
What are you doing?
I'm drinking wine and eating cheese and catching some rays, you know.
I feel I was denied critical, need to know information.
Damn, we're in a tight spot.
And if you feel it.
Oh no! What happened? Oh no! How terrible! That's just awful. How terrible! Oh no!
It's the wonder of nature, baby!
Yes, we'll reel around the flag, boys will reel it once again, shouting a battle cry of freedom. We will reel it from the hillside, all together from the plain, shouting a battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitors, up with the stars. We will reel around the flag, boys, and reel it once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom.
Welcome to the third annual Uncut History here for Uncut History Live on the Readout Productions. How is everybody doing tonight? Oh, wait. Why are you just seeing my logo? Well, there's a reason for it. Because ever since Tuesday, I've had something up with my one eye. I thought it was something as simple, maybe an eyelash, but now I'm wondering if it was something ever so microscopic got lodged in the back of my eye from work, because I was out there in the mud moving heavy furniture in the mud, and there was stuff flying all over the place. Thankfully, not the furniture. The furniture was intact, but the dirt and the mud and possibly dogs, fecal matter. I don't know. So, anyways, ever since then, I've been having issues with my eye, and I really just don't want you to be watching me for an hour scratching my eye. I got the eye droplets. I went out of my way on Turkey Day, no less. I got out of the house on the day off on Turkey Day to go to Dollar General to get the most random of transactions. Eye droplets and 2 boxes of 100 strand Christmas lights because somebody else in the family wanted to restrand a Christmas wreath today. So, yeah, very interesting purchase we made. And I think I'm improving on the eye, but yeah, it's bugging me. So you're going to enjoy the lovely logo that James Esparza, one of our followers here at Readout Productions, made for us earlier in the year. And I love the logo to bits. So you get to enjoy it in all of its glory. That's the upside of me and having that's not a health problem, having health irritations. Health irritations. That's a good description. We will go with that. But I will not be deterred. I will not be stopped to talk about history, because that's my respite from the chaos of the 21st century, the horrors of the 21st century, talking about the horrors of the 19th century, which are serious horrors. What we have today are first world problems. This is serious stuff we're about to talk about tonight. How's everybody's Thanksgiving going? We had our turkey, we got the magnificent stuffing, and all the gravy, we thanked my mother for making that glorious meal. That's what Thanksgiving's about. Thanking your mother for making the glorious meal and then devouring it all. And then having several days of leftovers. Thanksgiving's really extended sometimes when you think about it. You go through that whole day of making all that food, and then you're like, yeah, you don't have to worry about the rest of the week. You got leftovers for weeks. I have a great uncle who can just live off of turkey sandwiches or anything turkey related. So really just another day for him. Thanksgiving is. It's like Christmas for him, I guess. So, what are we going to talk about? Well, you may know, if you're familiar with the American Civil War, by what our title is. We're talking about the bloodiest 5 hours of the American Civil War tonight. And Tim Allen has joined us in. He had ham on apple pie with broccoli and cheese sauce. Cheese sauce. Oh, broccoli and cheese. Okay, I guess that would make sense. Okay, I was taking a moment like, what's going on? Oh, you do not partake in the turkey. I understand the apple part, though. Yes, I understand the apple part. So we are going to be talking about the Battle of Franklin. If you know what the Battle of Franklin is, great. You are probably in the 1% of the world that knows about it. As for the 99% rest of you guys, well, sit back and relax. Yeah, relax while I talk about how the United States of America completely imploded upon itself in the mid-19th century. Yeah, relax. Yeah, that's a relaxing subject matter. It's not like that nearly happened this year again, that the United States nearly imploded in another civil war. We're going to be talking about the Battle of Franklin. It's the bloodiest 5 hours of the American Civil War. And really, it was the beginning of the end of that conflict. We'll get into more why I feel this battle best is described as the beginning of the end. But first, we go to our lovely slideshow. Look at that. Look at it in all its glory. Totally did not throw this together at the 11th hour. Very nice. If you've been following Uncut History over the past few years, you know from time to time we've been commemorating the 160th anniversaries of numerous battles, because between 2021 and 2025, the United States of America is commemorating the 160th anniversary of the American Civil War, the deadliest war the country has ever fought, blood has ever been involved in. 600,000 to 800,000 Americans were lost in this war. So we've been not hitting every battle. I've been hitting a few here, a few there. We've talked about last Turkey Day. We actually talked about the battles for Chattanooga, which was in November of 1863. If you vaguely remember, the Union Army of the Cumberland and the Union Army of Tennessee, they were pinned down in Chattanooga, Tennessee, pinned down by Confederate forces, commanded by General Braxton Bragg of the Confederate Army of Tennessee, not to be confused with the Union Army of the Tennessee. Gets very confusing. Anyways, we talked about the battles for Chattanooga and how Ulysses S. Grant teamed up with William Tecumseh Sherman and teamed up begrudgingly with General George "The Rock" Thomas, and they kicked the Confederates off the high ground surrounding Chattanooga, and the Union opened a gateway to attack Atlanta, Georgia. And while we didn't really talk too much about the battles for Atlanta, we were more focused on the Eastern Theater this past spring. We talked about when Ulysses S. Grant goes east and he takes charge of the Army of the Potomac, and he fought Robert E. Lee and the Confederate Army of North Virginia in the brutal overland campaign. We recapped the battles of the Wilderness, Spotsylvania. We recapped the Battle of North Anna and the Battle of Cold Harbor. And then Lee and Grant got gridlocked in the trenches. And according to my calculations, it's November of 1864. They are still in the trenches. And bad news for them, they're going to be there for a little while longer. Let's pivot back over to the Western Theater. Sherman's been put in charge. Sherman tried to break through Confederate defenses at Kennesaw Mountain. Didn't work out too well for him. Eventually, he was able to get around the Confederate flanks at Kennesaw Mountain, forced the Confederates into defenses surrounded Atlanta, Georgia, a vital railroad artery and a vital crossroads. Whoever controlled Atlanta really would control the heart of the Deep South. And after several months of Sherman and Braxton Bragg jockeying for position, which led to Braxton Bragg being replaced by John Bell Hood, the youngest Confederate Army commander of the entire war. Hood was a little bit aggressive. He really shook up Sherman a few times, and we covered one of those events, the actual Battle of Atlanta, but ultimately Hood was not able to break out of Atlanta. Sherman choked the Confederate Army of Tennessee in Atlanta, and on the night of September 1st, 1864, Hood, with about 40,000 soldiers, will evacuate Atlanta. Sherman is going to lay torch to key infrastructure the Confederates could salvage in Atlanta, and he decides he's not going to sit around. He's going to keep marching east. He's marching to Savannah, Georgia. That is Sherman's famous march to the Atlantic. And as he is twisting all the railroad rails into wonderful neckties, which you cannot wear, way too heavy. Do not wear a Sherman necktie. Do not advise you doing that. Sherman's going east. What is John Bell Hood to do? Commander of the Army of Tennessee. Now, John Bell Hood, if you a little bit of a refresher about him, he's been pretty mauled by the American Civil War. He's been wounded in an arm at the Battle of Gettysburg. Then he had to have one of his legs amputated after a severe wound at the Battle of Chickamauga. But he is the youngest Army commander of any Confederate army. He's only 33 years old, got a lot to go for him. So what is his plan? What is John Bell Hood's big plan after losing Atlanta? And hold on one moment, I'm checking something over here. All right. Yes, I was fact checking myself. Wanted to double check. Yes, he was 33 years old. I kept bouncing between 33 and 38, but if he's youngest, 33 sounds correct. Well, Hood wants to surprise the Union. He knows things are not going well for the Confederacy, and he wants to bring some type of newfound purpose for the Army of Tennessee. And sitting around in trenches and fighting a defensive war that they're really not going to win. I mean, you're not going to defeat Sherman when he's in beast mode. Hood decides the best option is to go on the offense. That's right. John Bell Hood and the Army of Tennessee in late 1864 are going north. They are going back into their namesake state, and Hood's plan is to capture Nashville before the year is over. And hopefully this is going to shock the Union and maybe make them doubt President Lincoln and his claims that he's going to be able to end the war in his second administration, make people doubt that Grant really is going to be able to squeeze the life out of Lee, just shake up the whole system. So that is Hood's plan. Take the Army of Tennessee out of Georgia, bring it on the offensive, and try to take Nashville, which, by the way, Nashville, the first state capital of the Confederacy, lost to the Union in the American Civil War. So they want that back. They want that back. Now, you can anticipate where this is going. I mean, we know in history this is not going to last too much longer. Oh, I see in the Discord messages. Thanks for reminding me, Tim Allen. Oh, don't worry. It's on my. There's a lot of things on our objectives in 2025. Me and several other, the big studio we got here, Readout Productions. All me and a humble collector, and sometimes Pomni. The marketable plushie, which is owned by Glitch Studios, shows up. Between the three of us, we're plotting out our 2025 plans. I do want to go up. I do want to go up there. There's a lot of stuff I want to do in upstate New York. So Hood goes on the offensive. He's taking his 40,000 soldiers. This starts around early to mid-October of 1864. Initially, Hood's going to see if maybe Sherman's going to follow him. Maybe this will prevent Sherman from going deeper into the South. Hey, what's Hood? Why is he going on the offensive? Well, Sherman doesn't take the bait. Sherman's wiser than that because he entrusts whatever Hood's doing. He entrusts that to George Thomas, who is in charge of the Union garrison in Nashville and Central Tennessee. Now, to Hood's credit, as we can today, some people chalk this up to a near suicide mission. At the time, Hood may or may not have known it, but Nashville was not that heavily defended. Now, ever since 1862, the Union had been building some serious fortifications around Nashville, but there wasn't a bunch of soldiers in Nashville. There were a few thousand guarding the railroad junction there, but most of the Nashville garrison, Thomas's Army of the Cumberland, that's all spread out throughout Tennessee by late 1864, guarding a number of positions from Confederate cavalry raids coming out of the Deep South. So there is this narrow window where Hood, if he is able to move fast enough, could catch the Union off guard and divide and conquer these smaller positions of the Union Army throughout Tennessee. Initially, Hood is going to try to get the Army of Tennessee across the Tennessee River at Decatur, but he's actually be blunted by Gordon Granger's Union garrison there. He'll have to move a little farther west and cross at, I have to pronounce that. How do we pronounce that? History Saver 1941. If you're watching us, please pronounce that for me. The city with the T, the city with the T in northwestern Alabama. They crossed the Tennessee River there, folks. They crossed the Tennessee right there. and they're going to start making their way back into their namesake state. And morale was pretty high at this point. I mean, even though they've lost Atlanta, a lot of these soldiers are excited to be back on what they feel is their, maybe if not their literal home soil, their adoptive home soil. And really, they're doing something very different from what they've been in the past few years. Remember, every time we've touched base about the Army of Tennessee, the Army of Tennessee's had a real command problem, a real ego problem. Ever since the death of Albert Sidney Johnston at the Battle of Shiloh back in 1862, there's been a struggle to maintain order in the Army of Tennessee. Braxton Bragg had a real strained relationship with his corps commanders, as well as a strained relationship with Confederate President Jefferson Davis, which is what ultimately led to him being replaced by Joe Johnston. Yeah, Bragg. Did I say earlier Bragg was in Atlanta? No, that was Joe Johnston. Sorry about that. And Joe Johnston really did not want to have command of the Army of Tennessee. He didn't want to play middleman between Davis and the Army, but he eventually had his hands pressed, so he replaced Bragg. And he tried to do Fabian tactics, fortify, block your enemy, and when the enemy gets around you, withdraw, try to avoid a major engagement, because he knew the Confederacy could not afford a major engagement and serious loss of life and supplies. That was not a popular policy of Davis, not a real popular policy with some of the corps commanders, not popular with some of the soldiers, just keep falling back, and falling back. That ultimately led Hood in charge. And Hood, the pressure was on him ever since he was put in command. Do something different. The very fate of the Confederacy is in your hands. So credit to Hood, he has always thrown stuff at the wall, trying to think of how he can break out of the Union grasp, how he can shake up the system. And this is his best idea he got. So why am I rambling about all this? Just kind of saying, the Army of Tennessee, they're riding a little bit of a high, which may sound awkward to us today since they just lost Atlanta and we know how close the end of the war is coming. But these guys don't know that yet. They think they're turning the tide of the war. So I mentioned that Nashville was not in October of 1864 heavily defended, at least didn't have enough soldiers to face off against the Army of Tennessee yet. So George Thomas, who's pictured on top left, he's in charge of Nashville. He's getting wind of this massive Confederate movement across the Tennessee River. He is going to task John Schofield, who's pictured at the bottom with that. Oh, look at that magnificent beard. Man, you got to love 19th century facial hair. We could envy. We have to. Tim Allen has to agree with me on this. Can Tim Allen can you match John Schofield's beard? Tim Allen's getting angry in the chat. He's like, don't you dare. He reigns supreme over Schofield in the facial hair department. I know. But in any case, Thomas is going to task John Schofield of essentially delaying Hood. You buy Thomas time to get reinforcements into Nashville, to pull all of his resources to bear in the fortifications, and then all should be well. So Schofield is buying time. And Schofield's not panicking. He knows he's facing off against a very large Confederate threat that's moving very aggressively into Tennessee, but he's keeping pretty cool. As long as he stays one step ahead of Hood, he should be fine. I have a near Gandalf beard going right now. Oh wow. Do you have the staff? Are you gonna? You really could reenact Schofield right now. You can get out there. We can get you on the Harpeth River, and you could go. You shall not pass. We can do it right now. I don't know how I'm going to afford the plane tickets for us to go out there and do it, but we could do it. So throughout October into November of 1864, you're going to have Hood and Schofield trying to outflank each other across Tennessee, trying to get across waterways, get through key communities, trying to one-up each other. Hood is trying to isolate Schofield, prevent him from linking up with Thomas, because if those two link up, we're in trouble. Schofield got about 30,000 soldiers under his command in what's roughly referred to sometimes as the Army of Ohio. It's the 23rd Corps, as well as vestiges of the 4th Union Army Corps. They're making their way up to Nashville to link up with the larger Army of the Cumberland. And if that happens, it's game over for Hood. So Hood's trying to get in front of Schofield. Schofield's trying to get in front of Hood, trying to prevent him from going any farther into Tennessee. And things are building up and come to a tipping point when we get to Spring Hill, Tennessee on November 29th, 1864. Now, what's going to happen is right after crossing the Duck River, Schofield is going to throw a portion of the 4th Army Corps underneath a General Stanley. They're going to go and occupy the critical crossroads of Spring Hill. Going right for Spring Hill is the Columbia Pike, which is a vital artery if you want to go north and south in central Tennessee at this point. So if you're a Union Army trying to get to Nashville, you'd want that. And if you're a Confederate Army trying to get to Nashville, you really want that. So Wagner's division of the 4th Union Army Corps have thrown himself kind of out in the open there to get a grasp over Spring Hill. And the Confederate cavalry under the command of Nathan Bedford Forrest is going to be on the morning of November 29th pursuing some Union cavalry, chasing them off into the countryside. They get wind there's a Union presence over to their west. They go in and careen right into these well-armed men of Wagner's division. Forrest is going to message up to Hood, say, hey, we found this large, portion of the Union Army all the way out here. What are they doing out here? There, it looks like they're hyperextending their lines. So Hood decides this is the place to strike. I got Schofield hyperextended across the Tennessee countryside. I don't know where the rest of his guys are, but I got a portion of his army isolated here in Spring Hill. And he starts calling all of his army together. And they're going to arrive piecemeal throughout the afternoon on November 29th. We're going to have Patrick Cleburne's division. Arguably, Patrick Cleburne is the best battlefield officer in the Army of Tennessee at this point. His men form up and they start sparring with Wagner's division. They're rebuffed. Then you're going to start having other forces such as General Johnson's division is going to start forming up. You're going to start having Cheatham's men appearing throughout the night. Things are building up. A big battle's coming. The only problem is darkness settles over the Spring Hill battlefield. And there are about a 600 losses between the two sides as the day comes to an end. Hood doesn't arrive at Spring Hill until nighttime, so he really doesn't actually get to see the Union positions. He's hearing a bunch of different stuff from different commanders, what they saw in the final hours of day, and he believes that his men have isolated Wagner, that they've isolated him, has cut him off from linking back up with the rest of Schofield, and all he has to do is come in the morning, shut the vice, and all is going to be well. Well, funny story about that. So, for reasons that are under great controversy to this day, you'll notice the Union left flank, the Confederate left flank. It's kind of refused there. It's going toward the Columbia Pike, and then all of a sudden it makes a sharp left turn parallel in the Pike. Why that was ultimately the battle line, there was much contention over. I've had a theory that maybe Johnson's trying to protect his left flank because, hey, we don't know what's out to our west and to our south. The rest of Schofield's army could be there. And you would be right if that was the guess. There's other people saying it was just a miscommunication and they didn't understand. And no, you're supposed to stay with the line, not, perpendicular to it. There's stuff that says Forrest was basically useless, that he really wasn't doing a good job reconnaissing the situation, so he gave bad intelligence to all the infantry commanders arriving on the field, how they should best place their lines. Some say Hood got into a bit of a riding accident that evening, and he was in severe pain, so he was basically useless and trying to issue orders throughout the night. Well, lo and behold, the next morning, when Hood wakes up and the Army of Tennessee wake up early, ready to renew the attack and destroy this part of the Union Army 4th Corps, there's no Union Army. In fact, there is no signs of the Union Army anywhere to the west and south of Spring Hill. See, throughout the night of November 29th into November 30th, John Schofield and the Army of Ohio arrived. And about all 30,000 of his soldiers, they march up the Columbia Pike in the dead of night, feet from the Confederate front lines. They bypass the entire Confederate Army of Tennessee under the cover of darkness. It is one of the craziest moments in the American Civil War, and it somehow happened. Hood had allowed the whole of the Union Army to slip right through his grasp. And by November 29th, 1864, Schofield is a good several miles away from Hood. Schofield has made it to the community of Franklin, Tennessee, and is preparing to cross the Harpeth River. Hood cannot believe what has just happened. He would later say that I'm kind of, not quoting, I'm not quoting verbatim, it's kind of not word for word. But basically, Hood said that his best military maneuver was aborted at Spring Hill by accident. This leads to a meeting on the morning of November 30th in the Rippavilla mansion, which you're seeing pictured on the right. This meeting's been highly mythologized in the history of the American Civil War. There's stories that say Hood came in and basically called every commander in the dining hall a coward. Some say that Forrest threatened Hood's life at the sword for, insulting the honor of the Confederacy. It probably wasn't that grandiose. It probably wasn't all of his officers. It was probably more of an informal breakfast that Hood was having there. And he was probably very upset with what had just happened. Probably more bewildered at what had just happened rather than taking it out on his men. And then he's going to get reports that Schofield's men, they're still in Franklin by midday on November 29th, or November 30th. Sorry about that. See, the problem was when Schofield bypassed Hood at Spring Hill, he got a few more miles north, he got one up on him, but the bridges across the Harpeth River were impassable. They'd been destroyed by earlier raids during the war. So he's going to have to hang around Franklin at least for one day until his engineers can fix these bridges and get across the Harpeth River and keep going north. In the time being, he is going to set up his he has like 20 to 30,000 soldiers. He's going to set up his Union Army south of Franklin. He's going to take, precautionary measures. He wants to make sure that his rear is fortified in case the Confederates would launch a headlong assault. I don't know why they would do that. So he has Jacob Cox, who's in temporary command of the 23rd Corps. Cox is going to supervise the construction of these crude fortifications. These aren't grandiose stuff. They're not expecting to be here more than a day. These are just more precautionary measures to try to deter Hood from making a major attack. Archaeology that's been conducted in Franklin today say that these breastworks really were only about 2 to 3 high. And then everything above the 2 to 3 high foot of dirt, you're having fence rails being torn down, being piled up, any type of garbage that can be found to increase the elevation. On certain areas, particularly on the Union left flank, they're going to take orange or sage trees. They're going to come down and they're going to form crude abattis, sharp sticks in front of the earthworks. You got about a foot ditch in front of the actual earthworks. So, you don't want to just charge at them, but they're also not the strongest thing in the world. So the map over to the right, you're actually seeing an inverse of Franklin. South is at the top of the map, north is at the bottom. In the blue, you can see the lines of the Union earthworks. And that's what the Union are doing throughout the midday on November 30th. Kind of taking precautionary measures, but more focused on trying to bridge the Harpeth River. This is an illustration of the farm field south of Franklin. If you see off in the background, you can see maybe a couple of church steeples. This engraving around there where the church steeples are, it's like approximately where you see that skyline. That's approximately where the Union lines are being placed. This view is taken from Winstead Hill, located about 2 miles south of Franklin, Tennessee. And it's on this hill that scouts of Hood are getting a good look at the Union Army and seeing, well, they're not planning to move for some time if they're digging in, which gives Hood an idea. Hold the line, you filthy sheep herders! Yes, that's what Schofield's saying. And these are some more images showing you this area where they're built, where the Union are digging in. The top image is showing you the right side of the Columbia Pike. You're seeing the cotton gin, which was owned by the Carter family. Then immediately left of the Columbia Pike, you have a modern photograph showing you the actual Carter house, the Carter farm office, and a few other buildings relating to the Carter family. A bit about the Carters. Their patriarch is Fountain Carter. He has a pretty large family. I forget the actual number of children he has. I want to say he has like at least 4 sons and 4 daughters, at least ones that reached to adulthood. I could be wrong on that. 3 of his sons I know do enlist in the Confederate Army at one point in time, including one that will be very important to our story later on. Carter's house at the time is being used essentially as the headquarters for Jacob Cox. So, imagine here you have the father of several Confederate soldiers. And I should also mention the Carter family, they, at the start of the war, they had over 20 slaves that were of their possession and operating this 230-acre farm. They wasn't a really, by the time of the war, it was starting to financially struggle. You can find a lot of accounts from the Battle Franklin Trust of Carter basically grumbling his ledgers, the financial constraints they were receiving before the war. And once the war kicked off, man, do they really suffer financially. The best way to gauge that is by 1864, he only has about 4 or 5 people still enslaved to him. Everybody else has been sold off to try to make ends meet. So here you have a family of the Confederacy that are slaveholding, that their livelihood depended on enslaved individuals, and it's really taken their toll by 1864. And now they have a Union general occupying their house. Funny how the world turns. And this was not the first time the war had come to the doorstep of the Carters or the people of Franklin, Tennessee. A couple years earlier, General Granger had been in Franklin, and he actually built a earthen fort north of the town to protect the railroad that was going across the Harpeth River. Well, Hood has an idea. You want to guess what that idea is? Since Schofield is stuck for the time being in Franklin, it convinces Hood that this is where he should strike. Since he wasn't able to isolate Schofield at Spring Hill, he has him isolated here at Franklin. Take advantage of the situation and launch a full frontal assault. Ideally, it'll catch the Union completely off guard and break through their lines, put their backs against the Harpeth River, and wipe out Schofield's Union army. And that would achieve part of his objective, this campaign, defeat Union forces in Tennessee in detail. If Hood would achieve this, this would be a shocking upset so late in the game, after it seems that things are completely turned against the Confederacy. I think you can kind of figure out where this is going, but don't ruin Hood's hopes and dreams. So around midday, some of the last of the Union soldiers are making their way into Franklin. The last forces moving in are actually Wagner's. George Wagner had been the first Union forces in Spring Hill. They were the last to leave Spring Hill, and that means they're the last in Franklin. And here comes another controversy. I was telling the story of the Battle of Franklin, much like how many people cannot figure out what was up with the Confederate battle line at Spring Hill to allow Schofield to just walk right past them. What the heck is Wagner doing several hundred yards in front of the Union earthworks? There's some saying that's because they were putting him in reserve, which I don't understand why you would consider the front a reserve. I don't understand that part. I've heard some saying that there was a dispute between an argument between Wagner and Updike, one of his brigade commanders, over where they should be placing the lines. That Wagner wanted to go forward because no, they're not going to attack us. But, if we go, nobody's going to attack us. We go out there. We left our own devices. We only stuck in these filthy trenches. We have our own less filthy trenches. And Updike kind of went, "You're completely insane. I am not going out there in no man's land. I'm staying right back here in the rear." There's some that say that Wagner was drunk. I don't believe that one at all. Some say that there was an Updike-Wagner rivalry going, and this was to spite Updike. I don't think that was true either. I think it was just miscommunication. Wagner's one of the last guys to arrive, asked, "Where am I supposed to go?" And they say, "Well, you're supposed to go in the front." Phil in the front, and he took it to be, oh, I'm supposed to go several hundred yards in the front. And I also just discovered today, apparently his two of his free brigade commanders, apparently they had just gotten charged, like they'd just been put in command of their respective brigades. So you definitely have inexperience, not in Wagner himself. Wagner had several very important involvements in the American Civil War. He was key in several Union victories, or also saving the Union necks in the Western theater. So I don't think he was doing this intentionally to be bad. I think it was more of a miscommunication, and maybe his brigade commanders misunderstood what he was telling them. Because Updike's in the rear of the center of the Union line. Updike's a veteran; he's doing his job. His other brigade commanders, they are not really experienced in this position of power, so they took Saturn to mean, hey, let's go up several hundred yards in front. It's one of the big controversies of the Battle of Franklin, and unfortunately, I really did not have the time to delve that far into it. I am working on several history scripts right now for future videos, and I wanted to commemorate the 160th of the Battle of Franklin. So somebody in the comments, I'm sure, will go down the rabbit hole on the Wagner controversy at Franklin. Why is this all important? Because it's a very tempting target to Hood. You got a disconnected portion of the Union Army several hundred yards in front. If he smashes through them and those guys go running into the Union earthworks, it's going to cause confusion. It's going to cause a hole to open up in the Union Center, and it allows them to have a straight road to Nashville. These are the reasons why, by mid-afternoon on November 30 of 1864, Hood decides he is going to attack Franklin. The main attack will begin at 4 o'clock on November 30th, and it is basically the whole of the Army of Tennessee lining up, going out in lines of battle, sweeping across the farm fields from the Winstead Hill, sweeping out into the open farms, and heading basically running parallel to Columbia Pike, heading toward the center of the Union earthworks that are on the southern side of Franklin. Their eyes are centered on that small Carter farm, that small Carter plantation that's on a bit of a high elevation south of Franklin. Oh, dear Lord. Easy on rabbit holes, damn it. He might need more lube before you enter. I may need more butter. I may need more peanut butter. And Ms. Holmes, 66. My dad was C. George Wagner. C. George Wagner. What does the C stand for, I wonder? So here we go. Hood's big attack is going, and they're moving with quite a bit of vinegar, these Confederate soldiers. They're making their way across the field. There was uncertainty amongst the general ranks of the Army of Tennessee about this attack. Several were not really supportive of this maneuver. Some wanted to go and try to go across the Harpeth River and try to outflank Schofield. But Hood said, we don't have enough time for that. We got to break him now before he can get across the river. Trying to outflank is going to take too much time. It'll be dark. And I think in some ways, Hood is probably having flashbacks to the Battle of Gettysburg at this point, because this is a very similar setup where you think the Confederate attack on the Union left flank on July 2nd, 1863, we have the whole corps of James Longstreet making this counter march, trying to get it so they can be in the right proper battle positions, choose up the whole day. And while they do make some good gains in the early motions of their massive attack on the Union left flank, they ultimately are unsuccessful in taking Little Round Top. They're stalled out in the wheat field. It's a mess on that end. And darkness settles and really takes away any advantage they had. So I think in some ways, and Hood was then a divisional commander during that attack, I think in some ways this may be Hood having flashbacks to Gettysburg, like, no, we're not outflanking them. That's going to take too long. Just go. And there's also this idea of keeping the men moving. Don't let the soldiers in Army Tennessee sit and start letting reality sink in that, yeah, we are low on supplies. Yeah, there's no going back. If we try to retreat, where are we going to retreat to? Atlanta's fallen. You don't want them to think about that. This is like Cortez burning his ships to motivate his men. Just keep going. And indeed they go. This is a painting done by Don Triani, famed artist who does a lot of 18th and 19th century military history subjects. You're actually seeing a vestige of Patrick Cleburne leading his division with the iconic Hardy flag across the fields of Franklin. And you got to imagine when these Union soldiers start seeing this, you're seeing 20,000+ Confederate soldiers forming up and coming across these open fields or walking across 2 miles of open ground. They were not prepared for this attack. And this isn't just a simple, they're taking a nice little waltz. No. They're picking up speed the closer they get to the first line of earthworks. And of course, that's going to be Wagner, 2 of Wagner's brigades that are several hundred yards forward. The Confederates completely swamp over Wagner's advanced outposts, just like a gray wave crashing over. Wagner's 2 brigades start racing toward the main Union battle line closer to the Carter farm. It is sheer chaos. You can imagine how frightened some of these soldiers in the Union lines are going to be as this Confederate tide is getting closer and closer. And then the Confederate wave smashes into the Union earthworks. And for a brief moment, the center of the Union line is smashed completely through. Elements of Cleburne's division and French's division, even parts of Brown's division, they're pouring their way into this gap. This gap that's on the Columbia Pike. Basically, the gap is right where the Carter farm is, between the cotton gin and their main house. Confederate soldiers, come over the earthworks, dash in, push through the first Union line. However, as they keep going forward, they're going to start having some enfilading fire coming from their rear. Like there was a Union artillery battery, the 1st Kentucky, that refused to abandon its position. It was kind of they get, you have all these Confederates fly past you on your right or in your front. Looks like you're almost going to be surrounded. And I'm sure something like this will say,
"Damn, we're in a tight spot."
Come on, how to use that clip eventually. So they just keep pouring away as their artillery pieces are firing into the backs and the sides, and some of these Confederate soldiers jumping over. There's a second line behind the actual Union earthworks. There's what Cox sort of describes as an entrenchment, a retrenchment. It may have not even been a dirt wall. It may have been nothing more than just a second line of soldiers. And a lot of these guys in this second retrenchment, which is basically right up against the Carter House wall, a lot of these guys, they're rookies as well. And they're seeing all these guys run past them, and they're like, what? There goes what? Wagner, there goes everybody's running. What do we do? Well, I guess we stand and fight. That's what we're paid to do. And they suffer some pretty brutal losses. Some of these Union soldiers, groups like the 44th Missouri, there's a couple of Ohio regiments that have never been in battle for, but they stand their ground. It's just a few moments, but it's enough to just start slowing down that Confederate breakthrough. And as some of the Confederate soldiers, they manage to make their way a few hundred feet into the breach as far as the Lott's house. You can kind of see it on the right of the map. Then they're going to see a whole brigade of Union soldiers charging up the Columbia Pike. And this would be Updike's men. We mentioned earlier about Updike. He is in reserve for reasons that are still controversial. Was he supposed to go out with the rest of Wagner? Was Wagner supposed to be where Updike was? It's a long story. Oh, look, you're tying it back into the turkey. Very good. Gap, huh? Like the gap between the white meat and dark meat on a turkey. Something like that. So here comes Updike's brigade. They pour into and plug the gap. It is hell on earth. This painting gives you a pretty good idea as you have the vestiges of Wagner's the 2 brigades that have been ran over. You got men from, I'm trying to pronounce all these guys. You got Riley's division. You got Rugger's division. All these guys are pouring in, trying to plug the gap. These rookie soldiers from the 44, from guys like from 44 Missouri, your Ohio regiments, they're trying to stand the ground and prove their worth this late stage into the war. And then here comes Updike's men charging right through the property of, right through the Carter property. I mean, you have to imagine in the Carter house as this is all happening. You got, Fountain Carter. He got, I think it was one son, Moscow Carter is there, who had been recently, discharged from the military. He's hunkered down with there of his family. I think his 4 sisters, they're hunkered down in there. There's 2 enslaved individuals of the Carters. They're in the basement. The Lotz family, they've sought shelter in the Carter house for their basement. There's a couple other people we don't know. And there's this large gathering of civilians in the basement. They thought they would be safe in this house. And lo and behold, they're at the epicenter of hell right now at around 5 o'clock on November 30th, 1864. And the painting does include this report that Updike, once he ran out of bullets in his revolver, just started to club Confederate soldiers with his revolver, which is, it's a sight to behold. But it shows you just how desperate this struggle is. And soon the Confederates start losing ground around the Carter house. They have to start falling back to the earthworks that the Union had dug. They're pushed over those earthworks, and well, it gets worse. What ends up happening is the 2 battle lines, they become gridlocked for the next several hours. The Confederates are on the outside of the earthworks. The Union are on the inside of the earthworks. The Union keep throwing in reinforcements to plug gaps that occasionally keep popping up. There will be, I think there is another breakthrough much farther on the Union right flank by some of Johnson's Confederate division. They'll have a breakthrough around 7 o'clock in the evening, but that's also plugged in. This just goes on for 5 hours. These 2 lines are at point blank range on opposite ends of these crudely built earthworks. It is hell on earth. That is the only way to describe the Battle of Franklin as the sun sets over the battlefield. The Army of Tennessee desperately trying to break through. This is their last legit opportunity to turn the tide of the war back in Confederate favor. They felt they had it. They were on the road to Nashville when they went through that breach around the Carter house, and that had closed up. The Union are trying to keep the Confederates from getting into the earthworks. They know they're not very well built. They have to hold out until the Confederates can't take it anymore. They can't let them get through, lest the Union will be driven into the Harpeth River. We talk about Gettysburg, being the high watermark in the Confederacy, being the tipping point of the American Civil War. You can argue Franklin is same, if not more, just even though it seems weird saying how late in the war it is for these guys that are engaged in this battle on November 30th. They have no idea what's going to happen at the end of this day, what type of reality they'll be living in come the next morning. This goes on into dark, and by that point, you can't really see who you're shooting at. It is just a nightmare. And it'll be finally around 9 o'clock where the fighting starts. I guess say at least the fighting officially fizzles out. I'm sure there are occasional shots being exchanged into the wee hours of the night. If somebody sees somebody moving, but for all intents and purposes, by 9 o'clock, the Battle of Franklin has come to a conclusion. Now, the photograph to your right is showing you part of the battlefield today. Obviously, it doesn't look like farm fields anymore. It looks a little bit different. We'll talk more about that in a few moments. But that monument there is to mark the approximate location where Major General Patrick Cleburne is believed to have been killed, and really just sets in the high costs this battle is, particularly for the Confederacy, but for all Americans, for all intents and purposes. This photograph really shows you the intensity of the Battle of Franklin. This is taken inside the farm office of Fountain Carter. If I can go back a few images, that would be, if you're looking at the bottom image, you see that white building. That's the farm office of Fountain Carter. Immediately to the right is Carter's actual brick house. So you're inside it here, and this is I guess you want to say, this is how ferocious 5 hours of fighting was in the American Civil War. Just all of those bullet holes riddled through the south side of the farm office, and there's still some more if you're behind the photographer on the north wall as well. I don't want to quote, a certain somebody, but I have to say it. That's a lot of damage. Yeah. Pure devastation. I'm in a Gettysburg numerous times, and I mean, you see stuff, pitted with bullet holes to this day, and yeah, there's the Farnsworth house, but You got it. Sometimes there's some suspicion over the Farnsworth house, how many of the bullet holes are actually true and how many were embellished in later years for the sake of tourism. But there are a lot of bullet riddled houses in Gettysburg, and there are also in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Even there's some battle damage in Sharpsburg, Maryland. Although the Battle of Antietam didn't actually occur in the town, occurred around it. There were still shells hitting the town. There's few photographs of battle damage from this war that reached this level of destruction. And then try to imagine trying to stand in the middle of that. Just imagine it. How do you live through that? I imagine the Carters and the Lots and everybody who was in the basement of the Carter house as this battle roared on the literal top of their heads. Yet imagine what that must have sounded like. That it's the sound of your country unraveling, essentially. On the morning of December 1st, 1864, Hood would wake up and discover John Schofield and his Union Army had abandoned their position south of Franklin. They had pulled across the Harpeth River and moved north. Publicly, Hood initially claimed this to be a victory, although calling it a victory by the numbers is really, really hard to try to explain. You can see the losses. The Union had suffered 2,326 casualties, 189 killed, over 1,000 were wounded, and another 1,000 were missing or captured. That's about a 7% loss. I'm using the American Battlefield Trust numbers of Army size and of Army losses. So take that with a pinch of salt. But that's what the American Battlefield Trust has at least reported. 7% losses is what Schofield suffered. As for Hood and the Confederate Army of Tennessee, their victory had claimed 1,750 killed, 3,800 wounded, 702 missing or captured. That's approximately a 19% loss in the Army of Tennessee. That is almost a fifth of the Army of Tennessee lost in 5 hours. 6,252 casualties. But I guess Hood had to say something after all that was over. This was do or die for Hood, his men, and you can argue the whole of the Confederate States of America. You break through at Franklin, you destroy Schofield's force, you have accomplished part one of your multi-pronged plan to recapture Tennessee. You would still have to contend with Thomas. Lose, and well, you're in a forlorn hope at this point. And just to really hammer home how severe the losses were, not just in numbers, or really show you how badly mauled the Army of Tennessee was. 6 Confederate generals would ultimately die because of the Battle of Franklin. Brigadier General John Adams, Brigadier General Otto Strahl, Brigadier General States Rights Gist, Brigadier General John Carter, technically he would die a few days later, and Brigadier General Hiram Granberry were killed. And as we mentioned earlier, probably the most famous loss at the Battle of Franklin, Major General Patrick Cleburne, considered at this point the best battlefield commander the Confederacy had, not just in the West, but in period. He's dead as well. There is, on December 1st, there's a field hospital south of Franklin on the Carton Plantation, and it really sets in what had just happened to Hood and the survivors when you would go to that Carton, which is this beautiful, white building that's been converted into a bloody field hospital. If you go there today, go to Carton, there are still blood stains all across the wooden floors in the building. On the front porch, there are four of these bodies are laying there on December 1st. And it really just hammers home. This was more than just a terrible battle. This had altered the course of history. This had essentially taken any Confederate chance of winning in the West, taken it away. Tim Allen's commented and saying that Hood looked at it the same way commies look at Russia defeating Germany in World War II. And also more of a, a little bit more of a intimate understand of the losses suffered at Franklin. I mentioned earlier about the Carter family who were at the epicenter of the fighting. I'd mentioned that 3 of Fountain Carter's sons had been in the Confederate Army at one point. One of his sons was Todd Carter, who was in his early 20s. He was born at the Carter house. He would enlist in the summer of 1861, part of the 20th Tennessee. Eventually, he'd be transferred over to the quartermaster department and be promoted to captain. He was captured at the Battle of Missionary Ridge, the battles of Chattanooga, which we talked about last year for Turkey Day. He was captured on November 25th, 1863. And at least the popular story goes, he somehow broke out of a prison transport train somewhere between Pennsylvania and Maryland. And then he was able to find his way back into the Deep South. He rejoins his regiment in Dalton, Georgia, just in time to take part in this, what would become known as the Franklin-Nashville campaign. Hood's last great gamble of the American Civil War. And though he didn't have to, he volunteers to lead his regiment into battle, his company, I should say, into battle. He wants to be with the 20th Tennessee because he's quite literally going home. When he touches off from the Confederate starting positions on November 30th, he is literally walking home. And his sisters will find him hours later after the battle. They will find him badly wounded several hundred yards from his house. And he'll be taken into his house and he will die of his wounds December 2nd, 1864. Now, Hood would continue to pursue Schofield across the Harpeth River once he had licked his wounds and move forward to Nashville. Now, by the time Hood and the battered Army of Tennessee get to the outskirts of Nashville, Thomas has had time to pull from multiple Union forces across Tennessee, and he has essentially a modified version of his Army of the Cumberland. There's vestiges of the old Army of the Tennessee in it. Of course, you have Schofield's Army of the Ohio, the 23rd Corps. They're in there. They're pulling from small garrison positions all across Tennessee. I think he has about 55,000 soldiers in total. To blunt, at this point, you're probably looking at about maybe 20,000 men in the Army of Tennessee, if you're lucky at this point. And essentially, instead of attacking Nashville, Hood digs in and decides, all right, Thomas, you got to come and take, you have to hit the high ground now. You have to hit my earthworks. And my earthworks are far better than your earthworks at Franklin. It does not go well for Hood. The Battle of Nashville's over in 2 days. I'm hoping to cover it next month, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. Does not go well for Hood. That's what you need to know. And really, after the battles of Franklin and Nashville, there is no more major fighting in the Western theater of the American Civil War. Don't get me wrong, there are cavalry raids, there are skirmishes. I know there's fighting that'll continue out in Texas until summer of 1865. But in terms of major operations that are, deciding the fate of the war, this is it. This is the beginning of the end. The Army of Tennessee ceases to be an effective fighting force. Yeah, they'll use the name in spring of 1865 for another ad hoc force commanded by Joe Johnson, but that don't count. That was a different force. And ultimately, the American Civil War would be over by the summer of 1865. Franklin just was so savage in those 5 hours. It wasn't even so much it's savage, but also then you look lopsided is. Normally when we talk about these savage fights, both sides are really suffering from it. When we talk about the Overland Campaign, we're seeing both sides taking brutal losses. Here, there's a clear winner and clear loser. And really, it ultimately foreshadows the outcome of the American Civil War. Now, you'd think Franklin would be this big promoted battlefield, being this key moment in the American Civil War, really deciding the fate, at the very least deciding the fate of the Western theater of the American Civil War, if not really setting the course for the end of the overall conflict. Because of how brutal the fighting was, nobody in town wanted to remember it. I mean, there are a lot of, the Carters in particular, they had lost their son in this battle. But why would they want to commemorate this battle? It was a dark day for the Carter family. It's a dark day for everybody in Franklin, Tennessee. Nobody wants to celebrate it. There really is no preservation efforts in Franklin for many years. It really, interest in preserving the Franklin battlefield really doesn't start until the late 20th century. And at that point, it looked like there was no battlefield to preserve. The whole battlefield, those farm fields, those 2 miles of farm fields Hood had ordered his men to march across, that was all urban sprawl by the 1980s. Fortunately, in the past 30-some years, efforts by the Battle of Franklin Trust, as well as the American Battlefield Trust, and other very important organizations have come together, and they've reclaimed parts of the battlefield, restoring it as best they can to its historic appearance. And you'll see on the left there's the Carter House. It's still standing today. It's a historic site. You can go visit it as a museum. That's where it started, the reclamation. At one point, the only thing in the battlefield you can go visit was the Carter House. But since then, if you look at the map on the right for the American Battlefield Trust, and I really like these maps because in addition to seeing troop movements, you can see what has been and what has not been preserved. And the different colors show you what entity is preserving what part of the battlefield. And a lot of that, guys, was only done in the past decade. I'm not even joking. At one point, the approximate site of the cotton gin and where Claiborne was likely killed, that was a Pizza Hut until 2005. So the Battle of Franklin Trust has been doing a wonderful job, especially in recent years, reclaiming the battlefield, restoring chunks of it to really give the public a better understanding of the ferocity of those bloody 5 hours of November 30th in 1864 and how they really tipped the balance of the war to the reality we live in today. And hold on one moment. I do need a water break. Well, it's definitely an iced tea break, but I'm losing my voice. Okay, I'm back. I'm enjoying my Pure Leaf iced tea. It's bad enough that I have my eye keeps watering during this whole stream. I do not need to lose my voice. I do not need that. This week's been rough enough. I do not need that. So what I'm going to do, hit this, go over here. We're actually going to pop over and I'm going to show you a bit of a video that was done by somebody who I closely follow and also closely follows this channel. We're going to go touch base over with History Savior 1941, who earlier this year had the chance to visit the Franklin battlefield. I just want to show you a little bit of what the Battle of Franklin Trust are preserving.
All right, so we're back and we're actually standing in the middle of the battlefield here in Franklin. We're at the Carter House Visitor Center. You guys got to come check this place out. The Battle of Franklin Trust here in Franklin, Tennessee does an amazing job, and they're steadily doing an amazing job in the preservation of the Franklin battlefield.
Sorry, guys. Gotta get the share.
Now, we were at Spring Hill a little bit back talking about what happened to initiate this battle at Spring Hill. But as you're here, they got a little museum set up inside. There's also the Lots House and then a plantation we're going to see a little bit later on.
Why don't you see this? Because you'll get to see some of the artifacts they actually preserved.
Tell you a little bit about what happens in the portion of this field. And then, we'll continue on. So this is a little bit more than a trunk, as some of you guys probably refer to this as incorrectly. This is called a limber chest. This was part of the artillery guns, the cannons. Awesome. And this is what held your rounds and a little bit of your implementation, like your fuses for the cannon. And this particular limber chest was found in front of the Carter House as the Federal Army retreated back to Nashville.
So this is actually a battlefield relic.
At the back,
left right there at the center of the line where the break
limber chest,
and look
there's
at that.
Some battle damage here on
that
it
battle
itself,
we just talked about. That damage is coming from the battle we just described.
To see, and you can see the copper protection piece on the top, and up underneath it, the exposed wood. So pretty neat to see this relic. This isn't the only relic here. You also have the Carters who's going to have a cotton gin roughly across the pike from where we are now. And that cotton gin is going to be torn down by some of the federal units to help reinforce their fortifications along the Columbia Pike. And these are pieces of the planks that come off of that cotton gin. And you can clearly see bullet holes inside of them.
Like everything on that front line had been
riddled. Hole. That may not be a bullet hole, but you can see near or less pieces of the cotton gin that's no longer there. But a lot of this cotton
That
gin
was
was
a
torn
very
away
recent
to help
project for the
build
Battle
the
Franklin
breastworks
Trust.
for the
Getting
federal
the
troops
gin site
that is just roughly
preserved.
to the west of my location right now. And then you've got the story of Todd Carter here, who was a son in the Carter family. And he made it home. And this is a interesting story. If you're familiar with the Battle of Franklin, he dies here in this battle. And he was shot down. He was struck 9 times. He clung to life.
I
He was
forgot
carried
that's
home
how
by
much
his
he was
family
hit.
and died 2 days after the Battle of Franklin, where he
I
lived.
don't even know how he lived.
This is probably
lingered
one
on
of
that
my
long.
favorite stories of the entire American Civil War, the story of Mr. Todd Carter. And if you're not familiar with it, you need to come here to Franklin, support the Battle of Franklin Trust, support the American Battlefield Trust, because you could clearly see the work they're doing here, and learn about the story of Todd Carter for yourself. And these are some of the relics you can see here, some spurs. There is
I'm wondering how
a wallet,
are able to identify
a
these
sword.
Todd. I'm assuming that's a family provenance.
And he had this sword when he was wounded. This was his wallet that was saved after his death by the family.
I mean, all of
He
this
had
went
this
through
here during
the
the
whole
battle.
Civil War, the Battle of Franklin.
Then he had
These
some
are all
spurs.
witnesses
Being the
to Carter's
captain, he
story.
had spurs. And
this
these
isn't just
are
stuff we
pieces
just
of the
make
spur
up,
here.
to tell an interesting yarn at
And
the end of the
then
day.
you have
This
one
stuff
of the
happened.
bullets
And unfortunately, if
that
it could
was
happen
here. This
again,
was
which is what we
removed
want to
from
avoid,
Todd's
never
head.
happen. That's why we
This
talk.
is a 58 caliber Williams cleaner bullet. It was lodged just up under his left eye, and his family saved it. So that is one of the bullets that helped claim the life of young Todd Carter, who was 20 years old, a captain. And it's a tragic story. He dies in a battle, literally in his front and backyard. So pretty cool.
So I do highly recommend go check out History Savior 1941's coverage of the Battle of Franklin. You'll get to see a tour of essentially the whole battlefield's been reclaimed. You have to watch it. I could be here show day showing you images of it, but I want you to go over, first of all, give History Savior 1941 some love. If you like what we do here at Readout Productions and you love us talking about history and exploring these unknown stories of our shared past, then you're going to love History Savior 1941. He's one of many people out here on the TubeU, on the Green Page, on social media platforms, using social media to edumericate people. So he's, I'm not the only one doing this stuff. So go over, check his stuff out, but especially check out his Battle of Franklin cover so you can really get in-depth idea of what this preservation ever looks like. Because it is awe-inspiring what these guys have done in the past decade. Reclaiming battlefield in an urban sprawl setting. Who would have thought of that? Who would have thought that would have been possible? And now it is. And hopefully we keep having great preservation stories like that. So Franklin video, that's going to be in the chat right now. So Yin's in the Garrison. Yin's know what you have to do right now if you're watching the recap. Yeah, our Garrison is a bastion for historical preservation, which means you must share that link. You must share it. Share it now. I'm also going to pop you over to the actual Battle Franklin Trust website. Oop. I thought for a brief moment we stopped streaming. Thankfully, we did not. Share the screen. And then here we are at the Battle of Franklin Trust. And today it's a multi-property site. It's not just in downtown Franklin. They got property in downtown Franklin, 2 miles out of town at Carnton. Okay, so Carnton's brick house. And then white on the pillars, broken clocks. Right, twice a day. And then they also at Spring Hill preserved the Ripavilla Mansion, where the mythologized breakfast of General Hood, the last breakfast of Patrick Claiborne, all that stuff occurred there. And also tell the story of the mystery of Springfield. So let's go over and visit. Let's go over and visit. What do we get? Yeah, free locations. Awesome, free locations. Let's first of all go to the heart of the battlefield. More about Carter House. We're pleased to offer a variety of tour options for those wishing to experience all the house has to offer. They have a classic tour of 60 minutes, giving you a tour of the house and a self-guided tour of the grounds. They also do the battlefield tour, which is about 90 minutes. You can explore, in addition to, you can explore the reclaimed portions of the battlefield, including the site of the famed Cotton Gin, where the first Kentucky artillery positions were. You get to see the battle that ensued around the Carter House. They have a slavery and enslaved tour. They do a really good really good in blending in the story of how the relationship between the Carter family and the slaves they had on their property, tending to their farm, and of course how that correlates to the wider causes and outcomes of the American Civil War. The extended tour, the tour for me, which gives you a guided tour of both the house and the grounds. They do. Oh no, this is the tour for me. Springfield to Franklin Battlefield tour, only on Tuesdays from 8 to 12. $200 a person, and I presume they must do. It's a drive-in tour, and they do all the key sites between Spring Hill and Franklin. Oh, the Amazing Grace tour. This is a specialty tour providing a Christian theological perspective of the American Civil War, as well as application to the Carters and other similar families. I didn't know about that one. I would be interested. That would be interesting. So many different ways you can tell you could interpret a historical event. It doesn't just have to be. And then on November 30th, the Battle of Franklin, and it was bad. No, there's many ways you can engage people, different crowds, to get them all in to understand this very pivotal moment in history. But again, the Battle of Franklin Trust doesn't actually just preserve the battlefield itself. You can go to Carnton, which was a field hospital after the battle, and it's also the site of, I think adjacent to it's where they have the East Flank battlefield. It's a portion of the battlefield that really isn't about the center of the battle. It's more about the Confederate eastern flank, the right flank as they march toward Franklin. So you get a bit of an idea of the rolling farm fields they were traversing. Part of that is preserved there. There's also the Confederate Memorial Cemetery near Carnton, where I think it's like 1,400 Confederate dead are buried there. And then, of course, you got the tours of Rippavilla, which, of course, you have here, extended tours, battlefield tour. You can actually tour the Spring Hill battlefield, the great mystery. And then I can go on a tour and get my question answered. What was going through everybody's mind that night? Behind the scenes tour. I'm always interested in that. So yeah, Battle Franklin Trust, they've been doing a lovely job over the years, reclaiming history and bringing history back to prominence, not just for Central Tennessee, but all of the world to be educated by. So there's the link for the Battle of Franklin Trust. And as we wind down tonight's stream, no, unfortunately, Tim, no mead. Partly because, maybe if I take mead to the eyeball. No, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to get stupid tonight. Before we leave tonight, it is Turkey Day. So we should celebrate Turkey Day, and we're going to celebrate Turkey Day in the best way I know how. Do you know which way? It's a tradition here on the Turkey Day stream. Part of the tradition is we get copyright striked off the air, but also I don't care. We got to show the greatest depiction of Thanksgiving in television history. You know where this is going.
All right, fellow babies, and now it's time to go to our live remote man on the scene at the Pinedale Shopping Mall for the big WKRP turkey giveaway.
Cincinnati.
So take it away, Les Nessman.
This is Les Nessman, your man on the scene here at the Pinedale Shopping Center, where the excitement is mounting.
Buckeye Award
We're
winner.
here to witness the big WKRP Turkey Thanksgiving giveaway.
Hey, you got permission to be out here?
What?
You're blocking my store here, buddy.
Don't you know who I am? I'm Les Nessman. I won the Buckeye News Hawk Award last year.
Good for you, Buckeye. Now get out of my doorway.
I'm
Stop
sorry.
loitering.
Creep.
So far, so good, huh?
The first Turkey Day stream, we actually did a deep dive on the infamous, famous, it's not a bad thing. Infamous is when something's famous for a bad reason. It's famous for a good reason, this one. The WKRP Thanksgiving special, which really was the episode that saved WKRP in Cincinnati. You may not even know what the rest of the show is. It's a sitcom from the late 70s about a struggling radio station in Cincinnati, Ohio. Most people remember it for the 7th episode of the first season, which is this. This aired midway through the season. Ratings weren't doing so good. They threw this out as a belated Thanksgiving special. And it was inspired by apparently couple different stories of Thanksgiving promotion. I've heard him range that it was only based off of a turkey giveaway that was out of the back of a truck that went wrong. I have heard some say, no, they were indeed dropping turkeys from a helicopter. Never was there. It never went to this extreme. Yeah, Tim Allen knows what we're watching.
I'm here with hundreds of people who have gathered to witness what has been described as perhaps the greatest turkey event
Hundreds
in
of people
Thanksgiving Day history.
asking if you have
All we know for
turkey
sure is that
on
in a very few
Thanksgiving
moments there
Day.
are going to be a lot of
You got a
happy
turkey on
people out
Thanksgiving
here.
Day?
Now
No.
the crowd is
You have any pumpkin pie on Christmas Day?
well behaved.
No.
And
You
I think I
discover
hear something
Thanksgiving just
now.
happened on Thanksgiving Day,
The
and they
crowd
should
is
buy all
moving
this
out into
stuff.
the parking area.
Here it comes.
And oh yes, I can see it now. It's a helicopter, and it's coming this way. A helicopter. It's flying something behind it. I can't quite make it out. It's a large banner, and it says "Happy Thanksgiving" from W. What a sight, ladies and gentlemen, what a sight. The copter
Beautiful
seems to
sight
be
indeed.
circling the parking area now. I guess it's looking for a place to land. No, something just came out of the back of the helicopter. It's a dark object, perhaps a skydiver, plummeting to the earth from only 2,000 feet into the air. Second to the third. There's no parachutes yet.
Nope. I think you ain't going to see one for a while, Les. Actually, you're never going to see one.
I can't tell just yet what they are, but oh my God, they're turkeys! Oh, Johnny, can you get this? Oh, they're crashing to the earth right in front of us.
Story. The weight of a turkey and that type of velocity from wings, it's kind of redundant at that velocity.
Oh, the humanity! People are running about. The turkeys are hitting the ground like sacks of wet cement. I don't know how much longer the crowd is running for their lives.
All you have is turkey sauce all across the
I can't
pavement.
stay out here and watch this any longer. No, I can't go in there. Children are searching for their mothers, and not since the Hindenburg tragedy has there been anything like this. I don't know how much longer I can hold my position here, Johnny. The crowd.
The crowd ate him.
Les, are you there?
Cannibalized Les. Poor Les.
Les isn't there.
I don't know if we're going to find him again.
Thanks for that on-the-spot report, Les. For those of you who just tuned in, the Pinedale Shopping Mall has just been bombed with live turkey. Film at 11.
Yeah, one of the you know, we don't get enough love for Turkey Day. I mean, people for Thanksgiving now, we start Christmas crap end of September. We don't even have time to have our candy corn for Halloween. We just go right into Christmas, and by the time we get to December, we're like, end of Christmas already, end it. But you know, I'm a traditionalist. I enjoy my candy corn, Halloween, and all the years it takes off my life. Then we roll in and get all hyped for the big feast at the end of November. Because getting through November can be hell sometimes due to the always changing weather and always changing attitudes of the general public when they go and buy stuff at the store and blame me for all the problems. Anyways, and then we can officially, once we get for Thanksgiving, now it's Christmas. You know, once the star goes on top of the Christmas tree during the Eaton Park commercial, it's officially Christmas. So I'm now in Christmas mode. You can play Christmas music as loud as you want in front of me now until December 25th, 2024. And then I don't want to hear any of it. Like, hey, we got it for Turkey Day. Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, dear God. We need to get, we're going to make Thanksgiving. We're going to make it great again. It's going to be great again. We're going to slaughter millions of turkeys. It's going to be wonderful. We're going to get them all roasted up. It's going to be great. Well, what is an RFK Jr. Turkey Day? How does an RFK Jr. Turkey Day work? Well, I guess we'll find it out in the coming years, aren't we? It'll be interesting. That'll be interesting. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in for this special Turkey Day edition of Uncut History. But before you depart tonight, be sure to hit the like button down below. It lets the algorithm know that you do want to use social media to learn and improve society or something like that. I don't know. Some nice gobbledygook stuff I was going to say there, but I'm just too tired to this point. Hit the like button because it'll make you Read Out Productions grow. And then the more it grows, the more stuff we can do and all that wonderful stuff. So, hit the like button, And if you want to follow us in our future adventures, consider subscribing here to Read Out Productions so you'll be the first notified when our next video comes out. Like this Saturday, a new edition of Retracing History will be dropping. We are once again retracing the streets of Gettysburg. One of my favorite pastimes, just walking the streets of Gettysburg. No real purpose other than seeing what history I can unearth. No, I'm not breaking the law and digging up the National Military Park. I'm just going around and finding historical markers and, obscure signs and, just, hey, did you know this stuff? It's fun. It's a fun time. That'll be this Saturday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. New edition of Retracing History. It's Gettysburg themed, so be sure to check that out. But if you want to be notified, before even I notify you, consider subscribing to Read Out Productions. And if you want to go the extra mile and supporting us, you can subscribe. Well, yeah, it is a subscription. You can join the Garrison, that bastion of historical preservation I was talking about earlier. We currently have 3 members of the Garrison who I'd like to shout out tonight, of course, being R.H. Snow, Robert Fryman, and Trippy Soul. They help with their small monthly donations. They keep this channel running. They get me coffee in the morning to wake me up, which is actually very important to the runnings of this channel, because if I get up early, I can write scripts and do research for videos before I have to go to my day job and suffer. So, in all sincerity, I thank the Garrison very much for their support over the months, over the years, keeping us running. And thanks to everybody who's tuned in tonight. And if you're watching us for the first time, I'm thankful that you found us. And I am very thankful if you do hit the like button and subscribe. Or if you'd ever come back to see this channel, I'm thankful that you watched this one particular stream. Thank you guys for watching. We will see you next time here on Uncut History. Oh, I got you. I'm gonna really fix this so I can have a cleaner outro.
Springing to the goal of your brothers born before, shouting the battle cry of freedom, and we'll look in from the ranks with 1,000,000 free more, shouting